Okay, let's talk more about some more adaptive or effective ways that we can relate to both unwanted intrusive thoughts and worry. I'll just frame that up first, and then Jenna can also add in. So given that where this all starts is the anxiety state. We start with the fight or flight, and then we have catastrophic thinking. In the presence of the catastrophic thinking, along with the spike of anxiety, we have the urge to do something to make it go away. And the more we try to make it go away, the more we teach our mind that that is in fact a threat. And the next time a thought like that shows up in our mind, we better do something to figure it out. And so what we want to do is kind of sacrifice the current moment for the future self. So in any given moment, you want to try not to do something to make your anxiety go away, so that in the future, when you think the same thing, you won't have the urge to do something to make it go away won't be as strong, and or you'll have the self-awareness and observation skills to see that you have more flexible options than just compulsively doing whatever your mind is telling you to do. So in light of that, the first thing that we want to do is label the unwanted intrusive thought or the worry thought as an unwanted intrusive thought and worry. And when you do that labeling, what you're trying to do is cue to yourself that this is not a problem to solve. So sometimes people will say stuff like, oh, this is just my anxiety talking, and that's why I'm avoiding, or that's why I'm doing this behavior. And it's great that you have some awareness that that's anxiety and worry, but your awareness is not fully translating into a new behavior, because if you were using that label as a cue to do something differently, then you might be saying, oh, my anxiety has shown up, my unwanted intrusive thoughts have shown up, and that's actually why I'm sitting here and doing nothing. And I'm actually slowing myself down and not doing what my anxiety is saying, again, specifically to help out my future self, even if it's uncomfortable now. Jenna, do you want to add anything to that at this point?
Um, no, I think you've said it really well.
Okay. And then, so just to say a little bit more about your options for relating effectively, put simply, it's don't just do something, sit there. But to add a little bit more to that, you might need to find something to do with your attention. So if after you label something as an unwanted intrusive thought, with that label, you're really saying, this is not a problem to solve. This is just junk that showed up in my mind. And with that in mind, actually, listen to my first episode with Dr. Sally Winston if you want to learn more about junk thoughts. And so once you decide this is just a junk thought, then you really are not going to do anything to fix or figure out what's happening. And you want to turn back into your body and pay attention to and allow the sensations that come with uncertainty while you redirect your attention to whatever you're doing that day, whatever it is that you value. You might have a little bit of a split screen where the thoughts are still back there while you try to do the thing that you care about. But remember, you're not trying to have the best day of your life that in that moment. What you're trying to do is teach yourself that you don't have to listen to your unwanted intrusive thought, and you can still do the thing that you care about. If you happen to be experiencing worry, not an unwanted intrusive thought, you're basically just saying, there's a little part of this that's a little bit reasonable. There's a little bit of problem solving here. And so you want to ask yourself two questions if you think there might be some problem solving to do. First, you want to ask, is this a problem to solve? And so if yes, if the question is, what if I'm what if I'm not going to make it to my appointment on time? The problem solving might be, well, why don't I figure out how much time it takes to get to the appointment? So that would actually be some problem solving. But if you still had uncertainty, then and like fear and worry about whether or not you were on time, then you'd have to say, okay, this is just my anxiety talking. This is just the feeling of uncertainty. I have my plan, and I'm redirecting my attention to my plan rather than continuing to try to figure it out. So the second question you're going to ask yourself after you ask yourself, is there actually a problem to solve? And then how do I solve the problem? Is, can I solve the problem now? And so even if you can solve part of the problem, you might still have uncertainty because you can't solve the problem now. And then you're going to use the same skills that you used with unwanted intrusive thoughts. you're going to allow those sensations in your body and redirect your attention back
So
to the present moment and back to the things you value.
what a good example being in a traffic jam and being realizing you're probably going to be late, doing the problem solving of figuring out I am going to be late, you use your GPS, and then problem solving and calling the clinic and letting them know, but then still feeling anxious, but there's nothing you can do, right? Because you're in traffic, there's nothing you can do. And so reminding yourself, I feel anxious, but I've done everything I can. I'm still uncomfortable with being late, and I just have to tolerate that in this moment because there's nothing left to problem solve.
I totally agree.
Is that
So,
what that would look like?
yes,
Okay.
yes, absolutely. I completely agree. And so, with all this in mind, we all have so much uncertainty in this time, and we just wanted to talk about it a little bit. Hopefully, to offer you some skills, some education, and some hope. I want to just leave you with some words of hope, or at least something that makes me feel hopeful. And I think that sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself is to fall asleep and get to the next day. And so if you're physiologically feeling a lot of uncertainty and a lot of anxiety, I want you to just try to stay in the present moment, get as close to the present moment as you can, and try not to do anything that makes it worse. If you can just fall asleep and make it to the next day, your body may be less sensitized and you're more likely to be able to relax. Um,
Can I offer a self compassion exercise that I cannot take credit for? It is Dr. Kristen Neff, who is a researcher, what she recommends doing when you're feeling um, like you're in distress, but there's no problem solving to do.
Absolutely.
So what she says, that she talks about in her book Self Compassion, and the exercise starts by again labeling, noticing. You have to be able to do that. That you are in a moment of distress where there's no problem solving to be done, and then she recommends connecting with yourself physically in some way. To remind yourself that you're there for yourself, and just repeating these statements, which are, this is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of life. May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I give myself the compassion that I need right now. And asking yourself, what do I need to hear right now as I'm facing this struggle? And I like to imagine um, a loving, not reassuring, but necessarily, but a loving um,
Comforting.
energy answering that question. Some answers that I hear often are, "You're doing the best you can. Your, um, your best is good enough. This will end. You will make it through this." Um, which is different than everything's going to be okay, 100%, or there's nothing to worry about, right? It's not reassurance or explaining that everything is going to go a certain way, but more so a loving voice saying, um, you're going to get through this and you can handle what this is bringing. And you are both strong enough and doing the best you can, and that's good enough. So again, this is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of life. May you be kind to yourself in this moment. May you give yourself the compassion you need right now, and asking yourself, what is it that I need to hear right now as I'm facing this struggle?